Is your pet's gut health causing the inflammation that you're seeing? Is it the reason why you're seeing allergies? Or maybe you're seeing autoimmune disease, or you're seeing thyroid problems? How would you know? I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, and today on our weekly coffee talk with the doc, we are talking about your pet's gut health, what it is, why it matters, and why it may actually be contributing to the frustrating health problems that you are currently battling with your dogs and your cats. We're talking about gut health and allergies today. This month, we've been talking a lot about allergies because we are getting into spring over here in the US, and so many more pets are getting so itchy. And that might be you. Is that why you are here? Does your pet get those recurring ear infections, chewing on their feet, getting those hot spots? So frustrating, right? But guess what? There is a cause to the symptoms that you are seeing, and that is what we're going to go deep on today. So let's start out with, okay, what is this microbiome? What is gut health? Why is this so important? And your pet's microbiome is made up of trillions of different bacteria, different viruses, protozoa, and fungi. How crazy is that? And the cool thing is that when it's in balance, the good guys outnumber the bad guys. It's a fine-tuned machine that will affect your kidney health, your brain health, your gut health, your behaviors. And so that's when we see optimal health in our pets, when those numbers are in balance. Now, the thing is when we look at how does your pet digest food, how does that digestive tract actually work? So what your pet does is they ingest food, right? So they're eating either their kibble, their homemade diets, their canned food, their raw diets. And what happens? Gets into the stomach, it starts getting digested. When it gets to the small intestine is made up, the anatomy of the small intestine is really cool because it's super long, but what the lining is made up of is villi and microvilli. So it's like these little finger-like projections. And what they're doing is they're increasing the surface area of the small intestine to allow more absorption of those food particles that should be being broken down into small amino acids so that your pet's body is not reacting adversely to them. And so that's where the digestion is really happening. We get to the large intestine, and those good bacteria, those good beneficial commensal organisms have now done their job, and they start fermenting the food, and they're forming short chain fatty acids, things like propionate and butyrate, which are going to help feed the GI cell lining. They're also going to help with cardiovascular health. It's going to help with brain health. So those little particles that these amazing commensal bacteria, viruses, protozoa, fungi are all working together to create these things that we need in our bodies, that our pets need in their body in order to function optimally. Now, the thing is that these good bacteria, so they're digesting the food. They should be also fermenting the food into these short chain fatty acids. They're also making vitamins. So B vitamins are being made. Vitamin K is being made. They're also producing enzymes, which then are also helping to digest the food. So the other thing too that a lot of people don't realize that is getting a lot of attention and a lot of research is being done is that the gut is actually labeled the second. So there's a gut-brain axis, and the gut is called the second brain of the body. And what's really incredible is that when it's functioning properly, that's when we feel good. We don't see anxiety. We don't have those depressive states. And it's because those bacteria, those good beneficial commensal organisms that should be making up the majority of your pet's gut, they're producing neurotransmitters. They're producing hormones that are communicating back to the brain. So that's going to be regulating the serotonin levels, the dopamine levels. And when we don't do that, we see anxiety, we see behavior issues. So who here has a pet, like a dog or a cat, that has anxiety, that also might get sensitive, have a sensitive GI tract, like they get super stressed, or they go for a run and they engage in high activity levels, and you notice afterwards that they have loose stool. It's the connection between gut health and the brain. And so a lot of times when I see these patients who are dealing with anxiety, then, and you're like, I don't know, I've tried everything. Now we're looking at anti-anxiety medications. And I'm like, what's the gut health like? And they're like, pardon? Why would I look at gut health? And I'm like, because your gut is the second brain of the body. And most of the time we have issues with gut health, and we have to fix the gut. The anxiety is the symptom. And so a lot of times we're putting these pets on, like, your anxiety medications, the cats are going on Prozac, maybe you're on Prozac too, and everyone's just crazy. And you're like, it's not working. Now my cat is like a zombie. And you're like, I need something better. I've been there with my own cat years ago. We had urinary behavior issues. She literally destroyed my house. And I didn't know the things I know now. And we put her on Prozac and she just sat there and she was like numb. And I was like, I can't do this. I lost her personality, and we took her off of it. And then I started down this path of holistic medicine. And wow, when we start treating the gut health, that's when we can help the behavior problems. And the thing is too, is that 70 to 90% of your pet's immune system actually lies in the gut. So these are all the reasons why it's so important that we nurture your pet's gut health, because what happens if it comes off? Like, it's all out of whack. What we get is what's called dysbiosis. That's when the bacteria are off. We have the bad guys now outnumbering the good guys. And there's a lot of different strains. And I mean, there's things that we don't even know about yet that they're doing research. So it's going to be really fun and exciting to see the field of epigenetics and nutrigenomics, how nutrition affects the microbiome and affects the health of your pets by the foods we feed. And they're doing a lot of that research in people, and they're using animals as the studies, which is really cool. But what happens if those good guys are outnumbered by the bad guys? We get what's called dysbiosis. And what happens then is that we can get inflammation. We get inflammation in those microvilli, those villi that line the GI tract, and it's very thin. So it works very well when the body is doing what it's supposed to, when the digestion is working well and breaking down those proteins into those little amino acids, and those are passing through, they're being absorbed by the body, and they're being used by the cells, by the mitochondria for energy. But what happens when we have that dysbiosis? Things are off. They're creating inflammation. And now that thin lining is getting stretched. It's getting inflamed. So now the particles aren't being broken down. Now we're getting whole proteins being passed into the bloodstream. We're getting what's called leaky gut, right? Makes sense when we think about it. Things are leaking through that shouldn't be leaking through. And now it's getting into the bloodstream. So what happens? Now the body's like, oh my gosh, this is abnormal. This is not right. There's something foreign in our body, and it mounts an immune response. So we see like immunoglobulins galore being like rallied. We see histamine being released because mast cells are now being activated. We're seeing, what do we see, right? This is circulating throughout the body. Where do we see things trying to get out of the body when we have inflammation? The ears, we see wax. The eyes, we see runny eyes. We see diarrhea because it's trying to get out the back end. It's leaking out through the skin. We see hot spots. We see your pet licking their paws. We see red, irritated skin. So all of these are symptoms, though, of a leaky gut. And so allergies, when we're treating just itchy skin, when we're using Apoquel, when we're using Cytopoint, when we're using steroids, what are those doing? They're actually treating the symptom, and we're missing the root cause, which is the leaky gut. And this goes along with all of the other conditions too. So not only is it just allergies, right? Your itchy ears, the chronic ear infections, licking the paws, getting the loose stool, they're getting gassy, anxiety. Remember gut-brain axis. We see anxiety, we see inflammatory bowel disease. Guess what? There's microbiomes, little neighborhoods of these microbiomes in every single organ, the brain, the kidneys, the liver. So what else can we see when this is off? We see kidney disease, we see liver disease, we see autoimmune disease, we see diseases that don't even have a name. And I see those every day. And I like those. Well, I like healthy pets, don't get me wrong. But when I see pets and they're like, I don't know if you can figure this out, it doesn't have a name, I'm like, this is perfect. It hasn't gotten to a stage where we can name it. So now we look at like, where are the imbalances and how do we fix them? I don't want your pets to have a name for their disease, because it shows us these imbalances in the body. We can use herbs, we can get them on the right nutrition, and we can fix those imbalances before they, like, essentially metaphorically fall off the cliff and now we have to climb back up. So if you have a pet, if you have a dog, if you have a cat, you're on that merry-go-round. That's awful, right? And you're dealing with allergies, or you're getting ready, like you're getting prepped. You're like, okay, here comes spring, here comes summer. I know my pet gets bad. This is the thing. We have to start looking at the root cause, and the gut is normally, there is inflammation coming from the gut. And so those signs are the diseases. So any sign of inflammation, there's usually that leaky gut that's going on. And we have to figure out, okay, well, what's causing that? So what are some of the causes of leaky gut, right? Antibiotics, of course. It's wiping out the microbiome. It's taking out not only like bad guys, it's taking out the good guys too. And we're just wiping everything out. So if you have a pet specifically with allergies, and your vet's like, let's put them on antibiotics, we have a skin infection, I'm like, stop using oral antibiotics. Start using topical remedies. Antibiotics, number one, especially for like allergies or for dealing with some type of infection, usually a vet's reaching for antibiotics and just shoving them in your pet. And it's like, okay, it went away as long as it wasn't resistant. And then guess what? Oh, it's back. It comes back. And then you're like, dang it. Like, we can't get past this. Why didn't it, like, we treated the infection? I'm like, because you killed the gut some more. So now you're in a bigger issue. And now, okay, drugs, any type of drug is going to potentially lead to dysbiosis. So what can that look like? We're getting into flea and tick season. Flea and tick medications cause dysbiosis. Heartworm preventatives cause dysbiosis. So that's where using those natural remedies as insect repellents versus just blasting your pet's gut every single month with these medications that have numerous other side effects. And yes, there's a time and a place for these. If you live in an area where there's, huge risk of ticks, Lyme, heartworm disease, but try these natural remedies first, because you might find that the combination of them will work. And then if it's not, especially for fleas and ticks, like, always try your natural remedies first. And if it's not enough, then use the medications as needed. It should not be a year-round thing, unless you're in a year-round climate and it's a nightmare to treat. But then you really need to be looking at, how do I support my pet's gut health in order to ensure that I am not destroying it with these medications, or you will have problems. And it may be very subtle. It may be that your pet's just kind of anxious and just like on edge. And you're like, oh, that's their personality. And you just take it for what it's worth. But it will create low-grade inflammation, or it will create high-grade inflammation that leads to some of these other conditions I had mentioned previously when we aren't helping the gut health. So some of the other things, vaccines. Our pets are over-vaccinated. That's just like, we know that. And you probably know that. You're here, like, you're probably looking for natural remedies or looking for a more holistic way of helping your pets live their best life. And when we're vaccinating our pets over and over and over and over again and giving them 6 vaccines all at the same time, we are doing them a disservice. We are ramping up the immune system. And if your pet already has dysbiosis or the more severe, like, leaky gut issue, guess what? Your pet's already has their immune system ramped up, and you just ramped it up even more. That will lead to problems. That can stimulate an allergy or food sensitivity response. And so what we need to be doing is you need to be asking for vaccine titers. And everyone's like, great, that's great. They're like $400, right? So if you're in the States, guess what? Write this down, or like go back to this and watch the replay once this is done. You can have your vet send the blood sample for titers to be run at hemopet.org with Dr. Jean Dodds, and it's like $45. And it's more specific, it's not confusing, and she will tell you if your pet needs to be vaccinated if they're at 0. A lot of times vets are running titers and we're not taught them in vet school, and it's super confusing, and it comes back low and they're like, well, if I tell them like it's low, they're telling me that they need a vaccine again. However, they don't, because that's how the immune system works. That's how memory cells work. If your pet's not in contact with it, what happens is those antibodies should actually be really low in the body. They shouldn't be high. And if your pet comes into contact, say, with the distemper virus or the parvovirus, then those memory cells go, I got this. I remember that. And they mount that immune response and they take it out. They should be doing that. And they do their job. Your pet doesn't get sick, and you didn't have to do the vaccine again. And so vaccine titers, so TITERS, and hemopet.org will be your next best friend. They're amazing. Dr. Jean Dodds is amazing. And there's lots of information and research on that website. And so, yes, thank you, House of Paws Boutique, Dr. Rob through Protect the Pets. Lots of scientific studies there too to send to your veterinarian if they're like, titers are stupid. And same with like NutriScan food sensitivity test, that's done through Hemopet also. And there's lots of information and studies that show how that works. So if your vet's giving you like pushback because they're like, they don't know, and they're like, I don't want to do something wrong, and your pet gets sick because they don't want to cause harm to your pet, and we're not taught it. Send those articles, send those websites to your veterinarian, help inform them so that we can all be doing the best things for our pet. That's so important. So some of the other things too, yeast infections. Are we treating the yeast to help them feel better? But yeast can overpopulate the gut. It can lead to that leaky gut, that dysbiosis, and then we get that secondary result in the skin. And then also age. So age can also lead to dysbiosis. We start losing the good gut bacteria as we start aging. We're being bombarded constantly by environmental toxins that affect us, and it will affect your gut health. And so looking at all of that, here's the big thing: diet. Your pet eats every day. Be the safest form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. And many pet parents don't realize that they are poisoning their pets every single day with the foods that we are putting into them because they were told by their veterinarian that it's balanced. It's complete and balanced. Who here's heard that, right? Have you heard that from your pet? You should be feeding these brands that they're selling in their vet clinics, the big brands, because it's complete and balanced. If you feed anything else, it will make them sick. You might kill them. And I hear that I see that from comments from veterinarians. I'm like, dude, it's processed food. Let's get real. Why are we the only profession that is recommending a processed food in the same diet every single frickin' meal for your pets? What? Really? Huh? Can you please tell me the science behind that and how that helps? And here's why. We talked about this for 2 hours last month for our nutritional webinar in our VIP Natural Pet Parent Club. So get that, because there's lots of good resources too. You get a guide. And the thing is that glyphosate, there's numerous reasons why a processed food diet, it's just like us, why we shouldn't be eating processed food for the majority of our food. However, glyphosate, Roundup, it is being used on everything. What is it? It's an herbicide, but guess what it also is? It's an antibiotic. It's put into not pet food. Well, it is, because we're using ingredients that have been sprayed with glyphosate. However, they're putting it into the livestock feed for the antibiotic properties. So not only are these animals being in high intensive farming, they're not eating grass, they're eating grains that have also been sprayed with glyphosate. They're not eating their natural diet, which should be grass because they're herbivores. And they're also eating food that has been doused with glyphosate for the antibiotic properties. It is insane. It's absolutely insane. And what does glyphosate do? It's actually been shown to affect the Chickamauga pathway of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in your pet's microbiome and in our microbiome too. Keep in mind, all the things I'm saying will affect you too in a very similar manner. And so if we're using foods that are higher in glyphosate, what does that look like? That'll be your processed foods, your kibble diets. Numerous studies have shown that pets, dogs and cats, have over 32 times the amount of glyphosate in their urine compared to humans when fed a kibble diet. When they are fed a raw food diet, they have zero amount. And the reason why is because kibble utilizes your grains, your oats, your rice, your legumes. These are high in glyphosate content unless they're organic, non-GMO products. GMO products are made to withstand herbicide being sprayed on them. So we have to start looking at the ingredient list. We have to start asking the questions from the pet food company, like your grains, your legumes, and for allergies, what also happens, right? Your pet's itchy and your vet's like, oh, well, because we need to make sure that your pet's not having a food intolerance, or they usually use food allergy. They're very different. Check out our YouTube video about the difference between food sensitivities and a food allergy. Food allergies are an IgE response. It's usually immediate. They start vomiting. They have immediate diarrhea. That's like if you get stung by a bee, you swell up if you're allergic, right? It's that huge histamine response. Food intolerances build up over time. So if you're feeding your pet the same thing, especially these processed food diets, and I get this question all the time, why would my pet start reacting? Because there's these inflammatory ingredients in these foods. It's not a species appropriate diet for a carnivore. And what we're doing is we're creating leaky gut. So now you're showing your pet that same protein that's not being broken down into those amino acids, and that body is reacting and responding with IgA, IgM, immunoglobulins. And that's why food intolerance testing is so important. And that's why feeding the same food, if it's not the best diet for them, or rotating diets, that's why your pet over time can suddenly develop a food. And it's not suddenly, they just start showing the symptoms of the underlying degradation process that's been going on probably for years. And so looking at, okay, now my pet's itchy, the vet recommends a hydrolyzed diet because those proteins are technically broken down into like smaller proteins that aren't going to react with your pet. The problem is though, is we're still using like the chicken protein. And also now we added in hydrolyzed soy, which is a high glyphosate product. And we're using cheaper, really bad quality ingredients in these prescription foods. Like that's why people, when you look at, like, if you're feeding that to your pet right now, I challenge you to go and look at the ingredient list and question yourself, like, would I want to eat this every day? Like, would this be healthy for me? And I guarantee you, you will say no. And it's the same for our pets. And that's why literally like 60% of pets don't get better on them because we like broke something down that was already bad. It's still bad. And then we added in hydrolyzed soy and like potatoes, which are a nightshade, and high starches. Starches are broken down into sugars and feed like yeast. Like we're just jacking up the microbiome, the gut health even more with a lot of these prescription foods. So you need to go through and look at your pet's food and see if, you know, your hydrolyzed soy, your non-organic oats, are there lots of potatoes, your legumes, your pea protein? Is that making up the majority of your pet's food? It's really important to look for because if it does, it is leading to dysbiosis, guaranteed, guaranteed. You may not see the results yet, but there's some low-grade inflammation going on. And if your pet gets stressed or something else happens where they're bombarded with something, or you use a like flea and tick product, all of a sudden you get like this huge reaction. That's what's going on. It's a compounding effect. So that's why it's so difficult sometimes to pinpoint what's going on, because we're treating the symptoms. And yes, these prescription foods, unfortunately, they're like a big bag of some of these hydrolyzed diets are like $100. And I'm like, my God, we could have like formulated a diet, or you could have transitioned to a raw food diet, and it probably actually would have fixed the allergy problem. So you don't have to keep buying this horrible prescription food and making your pet worse, and probably eventually ending up with other health problems for your pet. Other things that can be in the food. So lectins. So lectins, the way they work, it's like the defense mechanism in these vegetables, or in these, what they do is they actually cause inflammation to the GI tract. And so if the food is high in lectins, so a lot of your legumes, if it's not sprouted, will lead to inflammation and those allergies getting worse, because we cause more leaky gut, more inflammation, a ramped up immune system. Gluten can be a problem for gluten sensitive pets. So removing gluten a lot of times can help them. The other thing is mycotoxins. We just had the aflatoxin recall. And the thing is like, oh, okay, like pets got really sick, pets died. Why does that happen? And it's because our pets their food in the pet food industry is the bad byproducts of the human food that wasn't good enough for us. So that's your moldy corn, your moldy grains, your diseased meats. Just look up rendering, and I guarantee you will never want to feed processed pet food ever again. Like, it is the most disgusting process that I never learned about in vet school. And if I learned about it, I would have been like, why are we recommending this as food for our pets for life? And the thing is that take a look at dogs naturally. If you want to start with like raw food diets, take a look at dogs first. Get Dr. Connor Brady's book, Feeding Dogs. There's a lot of great resources in there to get started on how to create a good raw diet, or use some of the brands that produce good quality foods that are transparent about the sourcing of the ingredients. But we need to step it up. The pet food industry is not doing the right thing. And there are people that are trying to change that, which is really important. And looking for foods that don't have corn. Like, I don't like corn. It's not the corn we think of, corn on the cob. It's not. It's like moldy, gross corn that's secondary. That's not even like, it's a feed grade. It's not food grade. There's a difference. The other thing too is dairy. Our pets cannot process dairy because they don't have that lactase enzyme. So sheep and goat's milk, it's a different type of casein. So if we're using like kefir, if we're using those types of products, raw goat's milk that hasn't been pasteurized, we can get beneficial bacteria, we can get good digestive enzymes. But you have to see, like, if your pet has a severe leaky gut, they may not do well with those products. So you always want to kind of try adding in one thing at a time. So to heal the leaky gut, start reading pet food labels. Start feeding real food. If you can't get your pet off of a kibble diet or a processed diet for whatever reason, try to feed the best quality one that you can, avoiding the things that I mentioned. So looking at the ingredient list, but also add in lightly steamed vegetables a couple times a week. We need those prebiotics from these vegetables to feed the good bacteria, to feed if we're adding in probiotics. Those guys need energy. And that's where you'll see in pet foods, they add in things like chicory root, inulin, cellulose. They're using it as a prebiotic to help with gut health is what they're doing. Those are prebiotics. They feed the good bacteria. And so those vegetables, if you can't do a whole food diet, then you need to add in real food into your pet's food a couple times a week. There's studies that show cancer risk is like reduced by 90%, of course, because we're getting the phytonutrients and we're also supporting optimal gut health. So start doing that. We can all do that. We should be eating more vegetables ourselves. We're supposed to get 30 different varieties of vegetables a week. We are all very deficient in fiber, and our health is suffering because of that. We don't get enough fiber in our day. And same with our pets. And so I'm not saying go and add like a bunch of Metamucil to your pet's food. You probably create constipation or other GI issues, but we need to start slowly increasing the amount of variety, the amount of real food into our pets' lives and also into our lives. So it's a great excuse to start adding more in. The other thing too, you are stressed. You live in a high stress household, right? And you're just like, you feel crazy and you're just like, and your pet's like feeding off of it. Your cat's like peeing all over the house because they're stressed, and or they're fighting with each other because you're stressed, and then you get more stressed, and then the dog's like going crazy, and there's like separation anxiety with a pandemic. We need to actually help that. We need to do stuff to reduce stress. And that's the thing. Like, we need to help calm ourselves, drink some chamomile tea, give your pet some chamomile tea in their food, remove the tea bag. And it also, chamomile helps support gut health. It's a natural anti-inflammatory, and it helps reduce anxiety, keeping in mind the gut-brain axis. Stress directly plays an effect on your pet's gut health. So we need to look at that. So environment, immune health, are they stressed? Are they getting enough physical activity? Are they overweight? Because the microbiome plays a direct result into obesity. That's crazy. They'll have different populations of bacteria that will make them more likely to take on weight, which is really, really cool. And so, yes, Fushi, like my nutritional consults definitely can help with formulating half kibble, half fresh food diets so that we can know it's balanced. We can definitely do that. So that'll be under shop at thenaturalpetdoctor.com. So looking at vaccine titers, also making sure that we're limiting the amount of drugs, the amount of flea and tick products that are going into our pets. And make sure you join us for this month's webinar on allergies and your pet's health, because I'll be giving you a lot of topical remedies, a lot of supplements, looking at food, and making sure that we are doing all we can to fix the root cause, understand where allergies come from, what tests you have available that you can run yourself, tests that your vet should be running, and when and where to use drugs, because some pets are such in dire straits. They're scratching themselves raw, they're bleeding, their ears are so bad. We have to treat those symptoms while we're healing the body. So definitely check that out. Like I said, if you're following us on Instagram right now, go to the link in the bio, click that. And you'll also gain access to our food webinar we did last month, the 2-hour webinar, because you'll get a 2-week access to our VIP Natural Pet Parent Club. If you just want to join our club, click on that. I love having more amazing pet parents like you be in our community. If you're not already a part of our free Facebook group, join the Natural Pet Parent community. I also do weekly live Q&As every Wednesday with our community, and it's just an awesome group of pet parents. Super resourceful. It's safe. You can ask questions, receive guidance on things that can help your pet. That's why I set up that community, because we need more safe zones for pet parents like you, so you can ask the questions and get help for your pets. Make sure you like and follow us and share this with other pet parents, so that way we can help spread the word that holistic is an option for your pets to help fix the root cause and prevent disease, and also fix disease, so that you don't have to keep going through this merry-go-round cycle of going to the vet clinic, spending a ton of money, and being super, super frustrated. I want that to end, and that is my mission. So I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the Natural Pet Doctor.